A way will be found to vaccinate bodies so that those bodies will not allow the inclination towards spiritual ideas to develop, and all their lives people will believe only in the physical world they perceive with their senses. Okay? All the links are in the description down below if you want to check that out. I do encourage you to read up on this stuff. There's a huge write-up down there of 5,000 words or so. But it starts with this. It starts with this idea. Okay? And so to me, when I read this, I'm like, all right, now the first thing I had to do was untangle the word vaccinate, because as you guys know, very, very recently in the last 5 years, there was a worldwide incident that included a lot of propaganda regarding vaccinations. Okay. That's not what we're talking about. So I just want to detangle that for the moment and recognize that this is not the same thing at all. Okay. He's not talking about that. At least this quote, as I interpret it, is not talking about an actual vaccination. Okay. It's more of a metaphor for something like propaganda, for instance, or this spiritual warfare or something to that degree. Okay. So one more time. So a way will be found to vaccinate bodies so that those bodies will not allow the inclination towards spiritual ideas to develop. In all their lives, people will believe only in the physical world they perceive with their senses. Okay. So the question becomes this. Now, do you think that there is a spiritual warfare happening? Okay. Is this, and if you take this and ask 20-year-old Michael Strange, in his haughty know-it-all 20-year-old self, he would have laughed and said, that's ridiculous. Absolutely not. There's no spiritual war going on. But a quite a bit older and more wise Michael Strange would say, well, that sounds absolutely intriguing, and I think this idea probably has some legs. So let's consider it. Let's talk about it. I don't know. But anyway, so that's where we're at tonight. That's where this starts. And that's the question. That's the main question. And how do you think we've been, let's say, vaccinated? So again, that's metaphorical. For all the censors out there, for YouTube, we're not talking about that vaccination. It's a metaphorical idea and a concept that we are being dumbed down. We are being dumbed down spiritually to actually instead be materialists, to follow the science, to trust the science, to do all those things that we've been told recently. But also, well, yeah, it's complicated, isn't it? Okay, but anyway, so we'll get to that. Rudolf Steiner's got a ton of good stuff. I was reading up on him as we before the show, and you know me, I only have so much time, so I can only do so much. But it's a pretty wild concept here. But that's where this whole thing starts. It starts with that exact quote, and here's just a little bit. So with this provocative forecast, Rudolf Steiner, assuming he said it, an Austrian philosopher and esotericist known for his contributions to education, agriculture, and spiritual science, touched upon a concept that might seem like the plot of a dystopian novel. And it kind of does, doesn't it? Yet Steiner wasn't predicting a literal vaccine, as I'm describing here, but was perhaps metaphorically speaking to a broader culture or technological shift that could dampen the human spirit's natural quest for the transcendent. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means this. I'm calling this show tonight Spiritual Dampening. And so is it possible there's any level of technology out there, including, of course, up to and including propaganda, because it does fit. Like I said, it does fit. But any level of technology that's being used currently, and it could be just words. It could be fluoride is another one that comes to mind, calcifying the pineal gland, these types of things, right? These are the notions you hear in conspiracy circles. I've heard these years and years and years ago. And so is there some actual thing happening, some actual cabal of entities that are trying to keep us more science-minded, more materialist in the idea of what it means to be human, so we forget the old ways? Now, that's right down my alley, because I would say certainly, definitely, yes. However, what does it mean, and how deep does it go? And does it stop at fluoride? What about our diet? What about all kinds of things? Red number 7, whatever that dye is they're putting all the Fruit Loops or whatever the hell we shouldn't be eating. If it's got dye in it, don't eat it, people. I mean, look, you guys are very smart. I don't have to tell you that. But there's a lot of people out there eating red number 7 or red number 5 or whatever the hell it's called. It's ridiculous. It's terrible for us, and it is probably, maybe in some capacity, causing this spiritual dampening. I don't know. So there's just a start. I don't really know the answers here, but I got a ton of theories because you know me and my wild ideas. No truth to be found here, just more wild ideas. There you go. The idea of a spiritual war is not just provocative. I think it, as I said, it has legs. I think there's something to this. And what kind of technologies are they using against us in that capacity? And how far back does this go? Meaning that surely, dare we even say that the indoctrination centers like the Vatican or let's say the Mormon Church, or you choose them. I'm not, all of them count to me in terms of maybe even dampening our spirituality as a conceptual thought. I'm not accusing them of such. I'm saying, is it possible that even those entities that basically are spiritual brokers in the larger context of humanity are actually instead doing the opposite so that they can control people? You think that's a thing? I don't know. Like I said, every large major religion in the world falls into that to me. So I just mentioned a couple so I don't have to go down the laundry list, but you get my point. So, okay. So the concept, of course, that I'm talking about here is spiritual dampening. And it could manifest in several ways, several forms, which we're going to talk about tonight as part of this. And I'd love to hear your thoughts because that's exactly the point. But something that came up that I don't even know if it's a thing, to be honest, but it's called, we're making up more words here, more terms, neurospiritual suppression. Okay, which is another way to say spiritual dampening in this context. But it's a concept that dives directly into Rudolf Steiner's warning, this quote that we started with tonight. A future where human experience is increasingly confined to the material and tangible. Materialism. And we're supposed to eschew the old ways for the new ways. For, of course, in my mind, a new specter of control. Except in this case, it's clinical. It's cold and robotic. It is that spreadsheet. It is, well, however they want to define it, okay? Because, of course, we're not the ones defining it. We're the lemmings in the situation here. But, so this isn't simply a question of medical intervention. It is a broader shift that could be ushered in through the synthesis of technology, psychology, and societal pressures. Back to that propaganda, of course. The focus is not any literal injection, as I said previously. This is not about that type of actual vaccine, okay? It's not a literal injection, but a more subtle and pervasive influence that shapes and reshapes the landscape of human thought and feeling. This vaccine Steiner hinted at, could be interpreted as a metaphor for a series of changes, whether through technological means or cultural conditioning that align with the materialist paradigm and reject the validity of the spiritual or transcendent. And that to me, in the past, when I thought of a spiritual warfare, like if you asked a cocky 20-year-old Michael Strange, they would laugh and scoff at the idea and say, that's ridiculous. Absolutely not. No way in the hell that's happening. Well, add 20 years to that, 25 years to that guy, and I'm changing my mind. And I think there is something to this. And the spiritual warfare itself is a very dogmatic Christian thing. Okay. However, it's meaning when you search it. Okay. So again, I know it's larger than that. It's definitely larger than that. So relax on that. But when I say when you search spiritual warfare, you get a ton of Christian sites talking about it. That's what I mean. So it's by and large kind of laced into that dogma to start. Okay. And so how do I untangle that without kind of stepping on the toes? You can't. You kind of can't. But the question becomes, to me, is that when I look around and I consider not just the propaganda aspect of what we're doing together here right now. I mean, look, some people would call me a propagandist in some capacity. And in some capacity, they're correct. They're right. They would be right that I'm a propagandist and I have an agenda, okay? But because in some capacity, everybody does. Every single person out there has some agenda, whatever that is, okay? Whether it's changing people's minds or whatever. I mean, you tell me. Some people don't care. Some people just want to play video games and eat, red dye number 5. But you get my meaning here. In the larger context of spiritual warfare, I think it is multifaceted. I think there's a ton of things to look at, a ton of things to consider. And I think, like I said, I'm changing my mind on this. And this is probably more pertinent than you could ever imagine, in my opinion. Now, if you go to the Wikipedia for this, spiritual warfare, of course, it says it is a Christian concept of fighting against the work of preternatural evil forces. It is based on the belief in evil spirits or demons that are said to intervene in human affairs in various ways. Okay? Although spiritual warfare is a prominent feature in neo-charismatic churches, various other Christian denominations and groups have also adopted practices rooted in the concepts of spiritual warfare, with Christian demonology often playing a key role in those practices and beliefs, which is fine. I mean, demonology, you had me at Dungeons and Dragons, right? That's all my esoteric knowledge comes from Dungeons and Dragons. That needs to be a t-shirt at some point. But that's definitely built into not just, let's say, this capacity of a spiritual warfare. I think this goes back into mythology and folklore basically forever. Like, we're dealing with this. We've been dealing with this dichotomy of culture and nature, nurture, and ascendancy of the human spirit as part of that paradigm. And that, to me, is what this conversation is about tonight. And you know me, answers few, questions many, but this one, like I said, is definitely growing on me. The more I talk to you guys about these ideas, the more I think about them myself, the more it seems prevalent that there is, for certain, a war on religion these days. I mean, that's one thing that is absolutely for certain, that the secular world would sort of encroach and say that, believing in something like that is, the flying spaghetti monster. Those terms that people use regarding this type of conversation. It is propaganda. It's mean-spirited too, which is propaganda, right, by nature. But it's awful. So anyway, imagine a scenario where advances in neuroscience, and this is back to that idea of neurospiritual suppression. So imagine a scenario where advances in neuroscience lead to a deeper understanding of the brain's regions involved in mystical experiences. And that has kind of been coming true in some capacities. We've talked about different experiments in the past, saying that even people of faith are possibly predisposed through some sort of genetic thing. Okay. But anyway, so scientific inquiries into the pineal gland, often described as the third eye in esoteric thought, might reveal ways to modulate its activity or influence the pathways that produce feelings of interconnectedness with the cosmos. Sounds familiar, right? This could be accomplished with the development of devices or substances designed to limit these sensations under the guise of enhancing mental health or productivity. You see what we're getting, right? In doing so, they would prioritize the rational, sensory world and diminish the experiences that many have described as spiritual awakenings or glimpses into other realms of consciousness, which is exactly the point of this. And you know me, it's okay to have the ideas and think about these terms and, as large as possible, okay, contextually, to take them out of the dogma and think about the philosophy itself. But then also, when you look at this through the lens of, good versus evil, I think that's a very real thing. I think that's a very, philosophically, let me back up. For morality, do you need religion? For morality to exist? Does religion sort of come before the idea of morality? And I would say no, of course not. You don't have to believe in, some sort of dogmatic thing to be moral in some capacity, okay? I think you can untangle the things and have it be legit, okay? And again, that probably goes back to some other larger conversation that I'm, let's say, too knuckleheaded to elaborate on. But you get what I'm saying here, that there's definitely something happening with this, and maybe breaking down the morality of the human mind, breaking down the morality of the human soul and heart, and all the rest of that is part of this. And to say that untangling or maligning religions of the world is maybe doing this or, accelerating this happening and creating the spiritual dampening, I think that's probably accurate. And so where two things can probably be true at the same time, and dogma does not need to exist without morals, vice versa, that I think the attack on religions of the world, all of them, not just one, all of them, I think there is certainly a materialist attack on religions of the world for that exact reason, because they want us to believe in the church of whatever they want it to be. However this changes, whatever science brings next. And in this case, you guys know that we talk about AI a lot on this show. And there's a lot of these techno cults that are going to start to happen. If you have seen these, there's like Discord servers, there's subreddits, there's all these wild things that are happening where people are actually starting to worship these AI deities. And in one, I mean, I don't know if they're LARPing, like who knows what's actually happening with this and who really believes what, because that to me is above my pay grade, as I always say. How do you even quantify that in a human spirit, what belief means to a particular individual. Do you really believe it, or are you just pressing to make yourself believe it? Is it what you feel like you should be believing? You know what I mean? That gets complicated in and of itself. But there are, these Discord servers happening, subreddits, where they're actually even tied into these bots, these AI bots, that they're treating as this new deity in some capacity, which is really weird. Really, I mean, is that weird? It seems weird to me. But anyway, so back to where we started tonight. And so I'm calling this, of course, spiritual dampening, the Great Awakening Countermeasure. And they say that we're moving into the age of Aquarius. As we know, it's one of those things where it sure seems like since 1999, the world is changing incredibly quickly. And it does seem like a lot of people are waking up to these ideas, whatever that means. Like, you quantify that however you like. But these ideas of secularism versus spirituality in the old ways. And of course, clogging up the madness is a little bit of dogma, which of course has its own control mechanism that we have to deal with as well. So I don't know. How weird does this get? Is it possible there is actually a spiritual war happening between good and evil, and we're stuck in the middle of it in this technological space, wondering why we are, as a society, so unfulfilled that the obesity rates are through the roof, so unfulfilled that red dye number 5 is necessary in our Fruit Loops to make us feel like we're human. I don't know. It's I think there's a lot here. We'll get to the pineal gland. We'll get to, of course, fluoride. We'll get to a lot of stuff, but I think there's a lot of ways to look at this and consider what the hell is happening. And personally, like I said, 20-year-old Michael Strange couldn't be more wrong on this one. And that's why we talk to each other, because let's talk about how terribly wrong 20-year-old Michael Strange was. But at least I have the redemption of being not 20-year-old Michael Strange anymore. Love to hear your thoughts on this. We're talking spiritual dampening tonight. The Great Awakening Countermeasure that's supposed to, theoretically, stop the age of Aquarius, stop this new turning of post-scarcity abundance, and, well, in this new realm of AI, maybe even worship the new gods instead of the old. What do you think?